James Brown pushed through the revolving door of the Augusta Grand just before midnight. Plain dark jacket, worn jeans, no jewelry, no entourage. His daughter Cynthia, 9 years old and already half asleep, had her arms loosely around his neck and her face pressed against his shoulder. Her stuffed rabbit, Miss Ruby, was tucked between them. James held her with one arm and let the door do the rest. He had not called ahead. He never did when he was visiting a property this way. Not as the owner, but as a man who had just come off a long road stretch and needed somewhere quiet to sleep, and wanted to see, without anyone performing for him, what his hotel actually looked like when nobody was watching. His father had spent 22 years working nights at a hotel very much like this one, wearing a uniform worn thin at the collar, carrying home a tiredness that was not physical and did not leave. He used to say, when he talked about it at all, that the way a place treats the people it thinks don't matter is the only honest measure of what a place is. Not how it treats the guests it is trying to impress, the ones it thinks it can afford to ignore. James Brown had spent 2 decades building a business around that idea. Brown Entertainment Properties had grown from a single struggling property in Augusta into a national portfolio. But what James was actually building underneath all of it was a test of whether his father's experience had to be the way things were, or whether someone with enough resources and enough will could make it different. He had opened the Augusta Grand himself, hadn't been back in 3 months, was back now, unannounced, carrying his sleeping daughter, wearing clothes that would not pass most desk clerks' initial assessment. The lobby was everything he remembered. Warm light from the sconces along the far wall, the low sound of a piano from the bar, the faint smell of the flower arrangements he had approved himself, a long front desk of dark polished wood staffed at this hour by a single clerk. James crossed the marble floor and approached the desk. He moved carefully so as not to wake Cynthia, whose breathing had already deepened into the slow rhythm of someone fully gone under. The clerk was a young man, mid-20s, in the hotel's navy uniform. His name tag said Derek. He looked up from his screen when James approached, and something passed across his face so briefly that if you weren't paying attention, you would have missed it. A quiet recalibration, the kind a person's expression does when information arrives that changes what they were expecting. He looked at the jacket, at the sleeping child, at James's hands, which were the hands of someone who had worked with them his whole life, which was true, just not in the way Derek was reading. "Good evening," James said. "I need a room. One night. Doesn't need to be anything special, just somewhere clean and quiet." Derek looked at his screen for a moment longer than the situation required. Then he leaned forward slightly and said, in a voice calibrated carefully for the space between the two of them and the woman at the bar 6 feet away, "Sir, this isn't the kind of place you can just walk into." James kept his face even. He had heard sentences like this one before, not in his own hotels, not since he had started building them, but in enough rooms across enough years of his life that he recognized the architecture of it. The particular way a dismissal is delivered, when the person delivering it wants it to feel like a policy rather than a choice. "I'm asking for a room," James said. "That's all." Derek straightened. "I'm sorry, sir. We don't have availability tonight." James looked at him. "Nothing at all?" "Nothing, sir. I apologize for the inconvenience. There are several other hotels nearby that might be able to help you." James did not respond. He held Cynthia steady and waited and watched. 3 minutes later, a couple came in. The man in a blazer, the woman in a coat that cost more than most of the staff made in a month. They had not made a reservation. Within 4 minutes, Derek had confirmed a room, processed a card, and handed over 2 key cards with a warmth that filled the entire counter. James watched every second of it. When it was finished, he turned back to the desk and said quietly, "I'd like to speak with your manager on duty." Something shifted in Derek's face. He reached for the phone and made a short call without meeting James's eyes. The manager arrived within 2 minutes. His name tag read Richard, mid-40s, wearing a suit at midnight in the way certain men wear authority, as something sustained through appearances rather than anything else. He had been briefed. James could see it in how he arrived. Not open, not curious, already decided. Richard positioned himself beside Derek, 2 people on one side, James and his sleeping daughter on the other. "Sir, I understand there's been some confusion. My staff has already explained that we don't have availability tonight." "There's no confusion," James said. "I watched your staff book a room for a walk-in couple while telling me there was nothing available. I'm asking you to explain that." Richard's expression did not change so much as it settled. "Our staff exercised their professional judgment. I stand behind that. Your professional judgment. That's correct." James said nothing for a moment. He thought about his father. The uniform worn thin at the collar. The tiredness that wasn't physical and didn't leave. He had built everything he had built so that a man could walk through a door like this one and be treated with basic dignity before he had proven anything. "I'd like your full name and your exact title," James said, "for the record." Richard provided them. James noted them the way he noted everything, completely and without display. Then he stepped back from the desk, found a chair in the lobby, settled Cynthia against him, and waited. Richard had not gone back to wherever managers go at midnight. He had positioned himself near the desk, arms folded, watching James the way a man watches something he has decided is a problem. Every few minutes his gaze crossed the lobby and carried the same message, the same institutional certainty James had seen too many times in too many rooms. The lobby had developed the particular quality of tension that forms when people sense something is wrong, but have decided it is not their place to name it. The guests at the bar had gone quieter. Diana at the concierge desk had stopped moving entirely. Richard made his move. He crossed the lobby with the stride of someone who has made up his mind, stopped a few feet from where James was seated, and spoke in a lowered voice designed to sound private while reaching everyone nearby. "Sir, I've given you some time. I'm going to be straightforward with you. This is a private establishment. We've explained that we can't accommodate you, and continuing to occupy the lobby after being informed of that is not something we're going to allow." James looked up at him. "I'm sitting in a chair. I haven't raised my voice or caused any disturbance. I haven't done anything that would give you grounds to remove me." "I'm not asking," Richard said. Something in the room shifted. A glass was set down at the bar. Diana went completely still. "Then I'd like you to call security," James said. "I want this on the record." Richard gave a short nod toward the far end of the lobby. 2 security guards, who had apparently been positioned there, moved toward James's chair with the patient efficiency of people who have performed this particular maneuver many times before. It was at this exact moment that Cynthia woke up. She came awake all at once, blinking into the lobby light, taking in the guards and her father's stillness and Richard's expression in a single sweep. She sat up, held Miss Ruby against her chest, and looked at the 2 large men beside her chair with the frank attention of someone who has not yet learned to pretend she doesn't see what she sees. Then she looked at Richard directly. "Why are you making us leave?" she asked. Her voice carried further than she intended. It reached the bar, the elevator, Diana's corner. Richard did not answer her. He looked at James instead, which was its own kind of answer. Cynthia worked through it with the patient thoroughness of a child who takes questions seriously. If their job is to help people, why are they making us go? No accusation, just sincere confusion. But sincere questions asked clearly in quiet rooms land harder than anything rehearsed. The guests at the bar had both turned. One of the security guards had shifted his weight in a way that said something in him was uncomfortable with where he was standing. Diana had gone completely still. James looked down at his daughter and kept his voice warm and level. "You didn't do anything wrong, Cynthia. Not one thing." He waited until she nodded. Then he straightened, reached into his jacket pocket, took out his phone, and made a call. It lasted less than a minute. He said 4 sentences, listened for 10 seconds, and ended it. He put the phone back in his pocket and kept his hand on Cynthia's shoulder. "Daddy," Cynthia said quietly, "do we have to go?" James looked down at her. "Not tonight. We're not going anywhere tonight." Richard heard this and stepped forward, his patience fully spent. "Sir, I am telling you for the last," the elevator chimed. The doors opened, and a man named Gerald Webb stepped out, the general director of Brown Entertainment Properties. A man who had been woken from sleep by a call he understood immediately from the first sentence. He was wearing a suit he had not had time to straighten properly. He crossed the lobby directly to James. He did not look at Richard. He looked at James the way a man looks at someone he has just understood he has failed. And he stopped and said with the formality the moment required, "Mr. Brown, I apologize for the wait." The lobby went quiet in the particular way that rooms go quiet in real life. Not all at once, but one sound at a time, until nothing was left but the piano from the bar, which seemed suddenly and completely wrong for the occasion. Gerald turned to face the front desk. His voice was even, which made it worse than if he had raised it. "This is James Brown. He is the founder and sole owner of Brown Entertainment Properties. He owns this hotel, the desk you're standing behind, the uniform you're wearing, and the contracts that determine whether you work here tomorrow. I want everyone in this room to understand clearly what happened here tonight." Derek had gone the color of the marble counter. Richard had not moved. Cynthia looked up at Gerald, then at her father. "Daddy," she whispered. "You know him?" James felt something in his chest finally ease, not disappear, but move into something with more room in it. "Yeah, baby, I know him." Nobody moved. Richard was still on the lobby floor. Derek had both hands flat on the desk, as if he needed it to hold him upright. The security guards had stepped back without being told to. Richard found his voice first, which was either courage or miscalculation. "Mr. Brown, I want to explain. We had no way of knowing." James let him run out of sentence. He waited until the words stopped coming, and spoke, his voice carrying without effort because everything else had gone so quiet. "You're right. You didn't know who I was. That's the whole point. Everything you did tonight, you did because you looked at me and decided I wasn't worth the standard. Not because of anything I said, because of what I looked like when I walked through that door. And you made that decision in front of my daughter. My father spent 22 years working nights in a hotel like this one. He came home carrying something that never fully left him. The weight of being decided about before he'd opened his mouth. I built this company because I believe that didn't have to be the way things work. That the person at your desk deserves dignity before they've proven anything, not after. You didn't fail a customer tonight. You failed every person who has ever walked through a door like this one and been made to feel like they didn't belong. And you did it in front of my child." Richard attempted one more sentence. It didn't make it far. "Richard," James said, "you're terminated, effective immediately." Gerald stepped aside to make the call. Richard stood for a moment longer, then straightened his jacket in the small automatic way of a man trying to preserve the last intact piece of something, and walked toward the back office without another word. James crossed to the front desk. Derek looked like he hadn't taken a full breath in several minutes. "You made a choice tonight based on how someone looked. I want you to sit with what that means, not with what it cost you professionally, but with what it actually feels like to be on the other side of it. I'm not ending your career here, but you're going into a full retraining program, not skills-based, values-based. If you want to come back after, the door is open, but tonight cannot happen again." Derek nodded, small, real. James walked to the concierge desk. Diana had been motionless through all of it. "You saw it," he said quietly. You knew something was wrong, and the structure here made it very hard to act on that. That's a failure of leadership, not of character. Starting tomorrow, you're moving into a supervisory role in guest services. I need people in positions where they can actually act on what they know is right. I won't let you down, Diana said. I know, James said. He turned back to face the room. The remaining guests were watching him openly. He spoke without preamble. The only standard I have never been willing to negotiate is this one. Every person who walks through our doors is treated with dignity, not based on what they're wearing, not based on whether they look like they belong, not based on any judgment made before they've opened their mouths. Every person, every time, without exception. That is what this company is and what it will stay. He looked around the lobby at the desk, at the bar, at the marble floor his father had never been permitted to walk across as anything but an employee. If anyone here cannot commit to that, I'd genuinely rather you find somewhere else to work, not as a threat, as the truth of what we are. The room held that for a moment. And then Cynthia, who had been standing beside her father through all of it, with Miss Ruby tucked under one arm, and the serious, focused expression of a 9-year-old who takes the world at face value, tugged his hand once. Daddy, can we get our room now? I'm really tired. Something moved through the room, not quite laughter, but something close to it. The particular release a group of people produces when tension finally finds somewhere to go. Even Gerald pressed his lips together. James looked down at his daughter, at the earnestness of her face, at Miss Ruby, at the absolute uncomplicated certainty that the world should make sense, and that when it didn't, you simply said so. Yeah, baby, he said, we're getting our room. 3 months later, a family came through the revolving doors of the Augusta Grand. 2 parents, travel-worn, a small boy dragging a bag twice his size, refusing all help with the conviction of a child who has decided this is a matter of principle. Diana was at the front of the house. She crossed the lobby before they reached the desk, introduced herself, and asked how she could make their stay easy. She did not look at their luggage or their shoes. She looked at them, at the tired eyes, at the stubborn boy, and she smiled the way people smile when they mean it. Within 2 minutes, the parents' shoulders had come down. Within 5, the boy had let someone take his bag. James stood in the corner of the lobby. He had come for a scheduled visit this time, wearing a jacket, though Cynthia had still brought Miss Ruby. He had not announced himself to the floor yet. He wanted to see this first. Cynthia watched Diana lead the family toward the desk. Then she looked up at her father. Is that what it's supposed to look like? James watched the tired parents exhale, watched the boy finally let go of his bag. Yeah, that's exactly what it's supposed to look like. Cynthia nodded, tucked Miss Ruby under her arm, and reached up for his hand. James held it, and they stood together in the lobby he had built, watching the place finally become what he had always meant it to be. If someone has ever looked past you before you had a chance to open your mouth, this story is for you. Subscribe and stay with us. We tell more stories like this one every week.